Joining me now is Republican Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota. Governor Burgum, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Great to be here, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here in person. We really appreciate it. I want to start off with the debate, just 2 days away now. And I want to play you some of what we have heard recently from former President Donald Trump as it relates to Kamala Harris. Take a look.
She was a bum 3 weeks ago. She was a bum.
Because she's dumb.
That's the laugh of a person with some big problems. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence.
I'm a better looking person than Kamala.
She's a nasty person.
Governor, do you think that's the kind of rhetoric voters want to hear on the debate stage Tuesday night? Will that win him the debate?
Well, I think what's going to win the debate, what's going to win the election goes right back to his economic speech that he delivered in New York on Thursday, because the number one issue for voters across this country, whether you're Republican, a Democrat, an independent, is the economy. And he laid out perhaps the most comprehensive economic plan that we've ever had a presidential candidate. And I called him afterwards and I said, I think you just won the election with that speech. Because when he had an opportunity to talk about how he's going to lower inflation, cut taxes, including no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, what he's talking about doing in terms of controlling the border, because that affects labor prices, housing costs, interest rates, smart tariffs, pro-American, pro-growth. This is something that's going to lift up everybody. And I think, again, the economy is going to be the deciding factor of this election.
So very quickly, stay away from personal attacks, you think, Governor?
Well, I think that when he stays on the issues, policies, absolutely, those are the winning issues. Because, again, whether it's crime, whether it's the border, whether it's Israel, whether it's wars abroad, President Trump has got not only the record of having served as president and accomplishing peace in the world and prosperity at home, but he's also got policies right now that make a ton of sense for every American.
Let's talk about his policies. I want to ask you about some of his comments this week at the New York Economic Club. He was asked what legislation he would support to deal with the high cost of childcare, to make it more affordable. He seemed to suggest he would pay for childcare by imposing robust tariffs. Is that your understanding? Can you help us understand what exactly was he proposing?
Well, I think it came near the end of his speech, and when he was talking about the opportunity we would have with energy abundance and energy dominance as a country, just like some states have, and just like some countries. You take a look at Norway, you take a look at some of the countries in the Middle East have built up huge sovereign wealth funds off of their energy. We have states in America, Alaska, Wyoming, Texas, New Mexico, North Dakota. Just those 5 states alone have built up over $330 billion of endowment funds because of the way they've managed energy in those states. So he was envisioning that if we have energy dominance, we sell energy to our friends and allies, we build up endowment funds, and then you can help pay for the cost of things that Americans need, just like we do in our state.
Well, and just to be clear, he was asked about how he would pay for childcare. He invoked tariffs. The person who asked him the question said his answer was insulting to parents because it sent the message that childcare expenses are no big deal. Was he specifically saying that tariffs would pay for childcare? And I guess a lot of people wonder, how did the two relate?
Well, I think that, first of all, dollars are fungible. And so if we've got dollars coming into the federal government that's coming from smart tariffs, where we're going for equal and fair trade, because President Trump really began his negotiations with other countries on Thursday. If you're going to tariff U.S. goods coming into your country, we're going to tariff yours. And so that's how we end up with free trade. But I think, again, when he was in office, he doubled the child tax credit, which was a big lift for families, and it helped lower child poverty in the United States. So he's shown that he knows and understands that. And he certainly understands how inflation is hurting every American today. And one of the things that has gone up in price is childcare. We know that from the work in our own state.
Well, Governor, let me ask you, because I hear you making the case for tariffs, but if you look at your state, soybean farmers took a real hit when Donald Trump imposed his tariffs during his administration. They lost 70% of their market. Do you believe, are you making the case, given that robust tariffs would be good for soybean farmers in your state? And what would you say to those who say they've been decimated?
Well, what would be good for soybean farmers in our state is that we actually add value to that product before we ship it overseas. Because when I took office 8 years ago, we had 0 processing plants for soybeans in our state. We've got two that have been completed, a third one that's under construction, which will take care of about 75% of our crop. And this fits right in with President Trump's policies, which is let's bring manufacturing and processing back to the United States as opposed to us being like a colony where we just ship raw corn, raw soybeans to China. Add value here. That creates job. It creates additional economic value in our states and in our country.
All right. Let me ask you about something that former President Trump posted on social media overnight. He seemed to be escalating his threats against political opponents. Let me read you what he said. He said, quote, "When I win, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Please beware that this legal exposure extends to lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials." We should note there is absolutely no evidence that election workers have done anything corrupt. But do you think that it is appropriate to be threatening election workers in this way before the election?
Well, I think it speaks to a concern that Americans have. And as we've talked about on this program before, we don't just have one election in this country. We've got elections that go across over 3,000 counties, and many of those counties have different rules. And so, again, I think what President Trump is saying, we're going to have, if we have free and fair elections, everybody's got to follow the rules, and just putting people on notice. And I think this could have been a statement that could have come from the Harris campaign as well, because everybody's concerned in this country about making sure that our elections are free and fair.
Well, Governor, and a lot of those concerns you mentioned are being fueled by these types of statements by former President Trump. But going back to the substance of what he said, he seems to be threatening these political operatives, donors, and election officials. Is that appropriate in any scenario, Governor?
Well, I think what's appropriate is that we keep working hard as a country to make sure that we've got a belief in our elections and a trust in our elections. We've got some states that remarkably have just now this year cleaned up their voter rolls and eliminating people that no longer live in the state, people that are no longer alive. And when you're talking about states taking millions of people off the voter rolls, I mean, this is just common sense database cleanup. I've spent 30 years in tech. I mean, you can't run a company if your customer database is completely out of date and has people that no longer are your customers, but you're still sending them a ballot in this case. Right. And so I think there's a number of basic things that we could all agree on that would make sure that the elections are free and fair.
And again, I hear what you're saying about the voter rolls. Important to point out, of course, there was no widespread fraud found in the 2020 election. It was deemed to be one of the safest and most secure in U.S. history. But let me ask you about the news coming from one branch of the Republican Party, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney and her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, coming out saying they are going to vote for Kamala Harris. Here's the statement from Dick Cheney. He said, quote, "He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He can never be trusted with power again." What do you say, Governor, to undecided voters who might be swayed by that argument?
Well, I don't know that any of the undecideds will be swayed, because I think it's been pretty well understood that former Vice President Cheney is not a fan of President Trump. But I think I know you've got Senator Bernie Sanders coming on next. I think that'd be a great question for him, because
I'll ask him.
Ask him, because I mean, this is the Darth Cheney. I think genocidal war criminal is what Democrats were calling him for decades, and now overnight they're embracing him. So I guess I'm just wondering if maybe he'll be on the campaign trail campaigning with Senator Sanders. I mean, this is a season for odd couples.
Well, you know what? You took one of my questions out of my mouth coming up. We're going to get to that with Senator Sanders. Governor Burgum, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kristen.
Really appreciate it. Great to see you, as always.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.